Hello there guys, this is Dino Man here, and I am coming to you with review number 2. And today we are reviewing the 1997 Carnegie Quetzacoatlus, which is currently the only pterosaur figure I own. So, without further ado, let's talk about its pose. So, as we can see here, it's in a pose with its mouth open, like maybe it's calling out or something. You know, like it's going caw-caw, you know, that kind of stuff. And then also with the wings, one of the interesting things about the wings, let me back the camera up a little bit, is that instead of going straight out, they're curved. Like that. You know? Which leads me to believe that this is probably in a diving pose. And the reason why is because when flying things tuck their wings back, that's when they're going to a dive, which is why I think this is what it's doing. And with its mouth open, that might actually mean that instead of calling, it's actually like swooping down to grab little, you know, pterosaur, or not pterosaur, sorry, sauropod, little sauropod right here, you know, or baby dinosaur. And one thing about the wings is that it can like flap with them. They're very, very flexible plastic, so like a little kid could like be using it and it's like, oh look, it's flying as it's flapping its wings, which is very cool, and I like that very much indeed. So overall, the fact that is even in what I believe to be a diving pose, which is something I have not seen in any other pterosaur figure, at least none that I know of, I am going to give this one a 9 out of 10, just basically purely for originality for the pose. Next up is detail. So when I bring his wing up close to the camera like this, you see is all these nice wrinkles and folds and all that stuff in his detail, which is very, very nice indeed. It's about as detailed as you can really make a pterosaur wing. And then when we move over here, we see that all the pycnofibers are very well detailed. I would even say they're up to a detail that Safari are doing today. And of course, I'll get more into the pycnofibers when we get into accuracy. We see the feet, which the toes are kind of individually sculpted, but really only just like at the very tip of them. You can see that there. You can see a better view of that with how they're kind of individually sculpted. More or less just a groove running through them. And then we move on to the other wing. Same kind of detail. Then we get up to the head. And, you know, there we go. Now it's all focused. About as much detail as you could kind of really expect to put on a pterosaur head. You got these nice grooves, the nice grooves up there in the crest. They got the tongue. Nice kind of folds and stuff in the beak. Looks very nice. It, in my opinion, has very decent detail. Has an ear hole on both sides. You can see it kind of better on that side. It's kind of hard to tell because it's black, but it is like, there we go, it's right there. See it? Yeah, it's got a nose. I think it's got pretty decent detail, especially considering when it was made. I mean, granted, I don't have the new Safari Quetzalcoatlus, so I don't really know what to compare it to, but to me, it looks pretty decent on detail. So, and this might just be because of a lack of knowledge on pterosaur detailing these days, because again, this is my only current pterosaur figure, but to me it seems pretty nice detailing, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the detailing, and that might even be too low. I'm just doing that just simply because I don't really know the amount of detail that are done currently modern day on pterosaurs, because I don't have one of those. Next, let us move on to the paint job. So as we can see with the paint job, the wings are this nice, lovely brown color, light brown color. We got these darker for the actual like arm and the finger, as well as for the little fingers. There is this black spot here on mine, but again, just like with the Brachiosaurus, I've had this figure a while, so I might have just done that to it. Same thing on that wing. On this one, we have the nice lighter brown underneath with like this darker kind of like brushed on top. And then we have, of course, dark brown feet with, I don't know how well it'll pop up, but it's got these darker bands to like kind of separate the toes. At least I suspect that's why they're there. And then for the head, it's got this nice orangey yellow eye, a brown crest, which kind of leads me to suspect this might be a female since the lack of color. A gray beak with nice tongue. And yeah, oh, it's got some yellow on the underside of its beak. That's really it for the paint job. It's kind of simplistic. The paint underneath the beak here, however, doesn't seem to be all that well applied. But other than that, it seems pretty decent on the paint job. It's definitely not like overly colored or anything, but I definitely think the color scheme looks very nice on this figure. It's very appealing to me. It's not the most standout-ish color scheme, but I like it a lot. So, my overall opinion on the color scheme is it gets another 8 out of 10. Now, moving on to the last main thing, paleontological accuracy. Now, one thing that I do like is they do have the limbs proportioned pretty right. How we have the forearm, the beginning area, I don't know what that's called, but the elbow is right there. You can kind of see from a bend, it's more prominent on this wing. And then this right here would be the hand, and then this would be the wrist, and then this is the hand. That's not the hand, sorry, this is the wrist, and this is the hand. And then we got these fingers here, which there's this bulge coming off where the fingers are. Sorry, you couldn't see that there. There's this bulge coming off here where the fingers are, which I don't think is super accurate. I think they should just be coming off. But I'm not an expert on pterosaur arms. And then we move down here with the elongated fourth finger. And unfortunately for the wingtips, they do seem to be pretty pointed, which we now know is not true. They should be rounded because being pointed kind of messes up the whole aerodynamics thing that, you know, they're trying to accomplish. And then we move down the body. The back limbs seem maybe just a tad too short, but I think they're pretty good on length. It has a short tail, which is good. It's got this nice, it's got this nice skin flap connecting to the tail, and of course has pycnofibers, which are always great and amazing to see. Pycnofibers have been known to exist on pterosaurs since the 1970s, but they weren't really depicted on them until about the 2000s or so. So this was made right about at that time, so it's very nice to see they included those on here. One inaccuracy that I don't think they knew about at the time is the wings are pretty skinny, and there's a pretty defined line. Especially when I do that, you can kind of see how there's a bump where the wing is. The arm is, I mean. Now that we know wouldn't be accurate. It had a bunch of air sac systems in the wing to help provide to help provide oxygen and that kind of stuff to the wing. And because of that air sac system, means that there wasn't this defined line. It was a wing. It would have been thick in the beginning, and then it would curve down and go to a point at the end. And there wasn't a defining line of arm, you know, kind of like an aircraft wing, you know, or even a bird wing, you know, there's not a defining line. Another thing is they do have this skin flap right in there, which is good because pterosaurs had this bone poking out right there that this flap would have connected to, that is unique to pterosaurs. And Then we move up to probably the worst part about this figure for accuracy is the head and neck. The head and the neck on this figure are really too small, or at least the neck is. I mean, that's a really, really short Quetzalcoatlus neck. It should be like that long, not this tiny little thing that long. It should be huge. They had giant giraffe necks. This thing was basically a giraffe that could fly. And also for the head doesn't look all that accurate to me either, at least the crest. The crest should kind of more be like a half circle and then dip off suddenly, which you see on the Safari one, the new Safari Quetzalcoatlus masters both those things, the long neck and the crest shape. The beak might be kind of inaccurate, but I cannot really tell. But other than that stuff, it looks pretty good. So it does have some inaccuracies, but not like a ton of them. But unfortunately, because of the head shape and the length of the neck, means that unfortunately, if I did not know this was a Quetzalcoatlus, I personally wouldn't be able to recognize it as one. And the fact that I wouldn't be able to recognize it as one does definitely dip down its score a little bit. So in the end, I've decided to give it a 6 out of 10 on accuracy. It has some flaws, and especially with the head and neck region, I mean, those things just seem kind of weird to mess up on to me. And maybe it was just a lack of knowledge at the time. But definitely, those are definitely the two major factors that have unfortunately brought it down. So before we find out this figure's overall score, let's figure out how big it is and do some size comparisons. So, for the length of this figure, we're looking at just about 4 1/4 inches, so 4 1/4 inches long. And then for the length, we are looking from wingtip to wingtip at about 7 1/2 or so inches long. And then for height, it's about like 1 inch tall. And then now for size comparisons, first up is our constant for size comparisons, the 2017 Safari Limited Feathered Velociraptor. Next we have the 2017 Safari Limited Dinocheirus, which also has a very similar texturing, only except with this one it's feathers, and for that one it's pycnofibers, and both of them seem to kind of have the same amount of detail. This one might be slightly more detailed, however. And then last, the figure that I reviewed last time, the 1996 Safari Limited Brachiosaurus, which is a decent amount bigger than this one. Now it is time for this figure's overall score. Overall, I give this figure a 7 1/4 or 7.25. Now, mostly it's the inaccuracy thing of the head and the neck that brought it down. But other than that, I definitely think it is a great figure. If you want to get it, I would definitely try and find it and pick it up as soon as possible, since it is a Carnegie and the Carnegie are out of production. So if you can find this and you want it, get it. But definitely, I would say if you want a more accurate Quetzalcoatlus figure, get the 2017 Safari Limited Quetzalcoatlus. So that concludes my review on the 1997 Carnegie Quetzacoatlus. Hopefully this review was a bit faster than my last one. I mean, my last one was 20 minutes long. I was a bit longer than I was expecting. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Unless something happens, which I guess you never know, the next review should be on the 2004 Safari Limited Hypocrosaurus. So I will see you all in the next review. Dino Man, out.